All right, guys, this is your lunch scoop. Going Facebook Live today to talk to a dear friend, Justin Murff, with the National Committee for Religious Freedom. I don't think we've ever done this, do a Facebook Live about a news story, but Justin and I have known each other for over 20 years. And I felt like we had to get some eyeballs on this story. This is crazy, Justin, what's happening to the National Committee for Religious Freedom, founded by Ambassador Sam Brownback. Many of y'all might have known him from Kansas politics. A great Christian, a great defender of religious freedom and religious liberty. Justin, you and I go way back to Christ for the Nations and Dallas Baptist University, and you're the executive director of National Committee for Religious Freedom. So, hey, just greet everybody and let's get into it.
Well, howdy, y'all. Good to be with you, Bunny. Great to always see you and hang out. And, it's crazy that we are in the situation that we're in. And who would have thought that here we are in 2022, that an organization committed to defending religious freedom for all Americans everywhere, all the time, would be in a situation where we ourselves were debanked by Chase Bank.
So Chase Bank took your account, which was a 501c4, National Committee for Religious Freedom. You guys are a policy organization promoting religious freedom. I mean, not talking just about Christian religious freedom, but for all faith, as we emphasized. And you are going to be, advocating for religious freedom in the U.S. Congress and other places. And that's what you guys have been working on. And Chase just canceled your account?
Literally 3 weeks into our account, the ambassador goes to deposit a donation check at his local Chase branch. The ambassador and I opened it. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Sam Brownback, former U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom, former Kansas governor and senator. This is a man who has tirelessly defended religious freedom abroad. And in the beginning of January 2022, he realized, you know what? I've spent so much time focusing on defending religious freedom abroad, but as I look around, I'm beginning to see religious freedom coming under attack here at home. And so perhaps we need to create an organization committed to defending religious freedom right here in the United States. And so that's why the National Committee for Religious Freedom was formed as a bipartisan, non-sectarian organization where we've got everybody at the table. And so it's, we've got Tony Perkins and Penny Nance, Cardinal Dolan, Congressman Frank Wolf, Democrat Congressman Dan Lipinski, former U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. These are just some of our kind of more political advisors. But then on the religious side, we have Bishop Derek Jones, the Anglican bishop for the Armed Forces, former chair of National Council for Ministry of the Armed Forces, which oversees all the military ministries and chaplaincies. We also have a Sheikh Hamza Youssef as a Muslim scholar out of California, Rabbi Yaakov Menken. We have representatives from the Buddhist and Hindu communities. We've got representatives from just a wide range of faiths at the table. We don't agree on anything theologically, right? But we agree 100% that the First Amendment of the Constitution is our inalienable God-given right, and that needs to be defended for everybody. And that's what we do. So the ambassador and I went into a Chase branch in Washington, D.C. It's not like they didn't know who the man was, right? Because you have to have two forms of ID, and one of them was his Kansas driver's license and his Senate ID card. So,
exactly.
They knew exactly. They knew what we were opening, and we were very clear. We're a C4 nonprofit organization, and for some of your viewers that may not know this, the IRS does not require a 501c4 to disclose its donors. We have to disclose who we give money to, but we do not have to disclose where that money comes from. So then that's a really important point as we unpack what Chase is alleging now. So 3 weeks into our banking relationship, the ambassador goes in, I'm overseas at a conference, and he can't deposit the check because the teller tells him, I'm sorry, your account's been closed and restricted. We'll send you your money back in about 3 days. And around that time, I have my assistant open up some mail, and we get a letter that says, dated on the 6th of May, Sorry, but your account is closed. Chase has decided to end its business relationship with the National Committee for Religious Freedom. That letter, by the way, is on our website, the NCRF, THENCRF.org/chased away. And we were an organization that were chased away. And we've realized since there are dozens of faith-based organizations that have also been chased away from big banking. And we want to know why. We want to understand what really happened. Chase's stated policy is 60 days notice. And what they told us is they closed our account because we failed to provide information within 60 days. And I said, well, that's really weird. How can you close our account for failure to provide information in 60 days when you closed our account on day 21?
Exactly. It hasn't even been open 3 weeks. That's crazy.
And so then finally, I'm persistent, as you know, and I've called and was able to work my way up to the executive offices of Chase Bank in New York, where a representative said, look, I dug in and first, I'm not sure why your account was closed at 21 days, but it came from the corporate office. There's a note on the file that I'm really not supposed to give you any further information, but I did dig in to find out what information they wanted. And here's what we found out. They wanted a list of any of your donors who've given more than 10% of your operating or donations. They want to know the criteria by which you'll select people that you're going to support and endorse. And they want a list of the candidates you intend to endorse and support. And I was just flabbergasted because our current bank that we're with didn't ask for any of that. I've opened up nonprofits and I've opened up banking accounts for nonprofits now for almost a dozen different organizations, and I've never heard of a bank asking that information, especially given, like I mentioned before, the IRS doesn't require a C4 to disclose its donor list, and yet Chase Bank wanted a list of our donors, and something just doesn't smell quite right.
No, and it's crazy because you could be endorsing or supporting Democrats, Republicans, anybody that supports religious freedom. I mean, most members of Congress, regardless of political party, support religious freedom and the First Amendment, right? It's a small little minority that might just want to control everybody. But I mean, it's a noble cause. And Ambassador Brownback has done just incredible work, especially when you talk about closed countries, right? When you talk about Iran and North Korea. I mean, we're in America, people. This is not supposed to happen in America. And what just freaked me out on this, Justin, was, I mean, most people know our story. We were the ministry that was denied our tax exempt status last year because the IRS said in writing, in an IRS denial, that Bible teachings are typically affiliated with the Republican Party and candidates. And then just said, because you're talking about the sanctity of life, biblical justice, debt and taxation, Israel, etc., these things are partisan and therefore you are not a 501c3. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And so thankfully, our friends at First Liberty helped us fight that. And we went through the internal process with the IRS and, won in 21 days. Thank God for all the people praying and calling their representatives and this kind of thing. But the public outcry, Justin, mattered in our case. And I think the public outcry to Chase Bank has to be severe on this. I am not one that has ever called for a boycott, and I'm not necessarily calling for a boycott not now, but they need to hear that this is not okay. This is not okay. And I loved Ambassador Brownback's letter he wrote to the CEO of Chase Bank. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So he just asked the questions. Jamie Dimon was a part of a panel that spoke. These are the heads of the nation's major banks. They give an annual report to the Senate Banking, Finance, and Urban Affairs Committee. And what surprised us in watching those testimonies is of all the CEOs of the major banks that spoke, Jamie Dimon is the only one that talked about the value and virtue of religious freedom in America and God's blessing on the country. So I just thought, man, that is so ironic that the one guy who rightly talks about the importance of religious freedom, and yet what we've experienced is something contrary. And, the actions of Chase seem to not necessarily be in line with the messaging that's coming from the top in his testimony. And the ambassador simply said, look, if I was still in the Senate, I'd ask you if you really meant it, because the actions of Chase Bank seem to indicate otherwise. Where we've come into a couple of things. One, the concern is they can debank us. They can debank anybody, college,
Yes.
house
Yes.
of worship, Christian-owned business. And I've had some people say, look, aren't you kind of whining and complaining? Because, you say that a private business like a baker or a florist has the right to express well, that's true. The difference here is that a private baker or a florist or a small family-owned business is not receiving millions upon millions of dollars in federal insurance, in federal subsidies, and participating in federal banking and finance programs like banks do. And so if a bank takes federal insurance, if the bank is FDIC insured, if they participate in any federal program, I think it's right and just that those banks commit publicly to uphold and defend the First Amendment of the Constitution, including the free exercise of religion. And that's what we're really about. I'm not anti-Chase. I love Chase Bank. I still have credit cards with Chase Bank. Don't tell Dave Ramsey, but we've been multi-generations with Chase in Dallas, right? So I'm not anti-Chase. I'm just very pro-religious freedom. And I think there's a cautionary tale for us that we may have to start looking at, the Catholics would call it kind of a Benedict option or a Knights of Columbus option for banking. But who would have thought in this day and age that Christian-owned businesses, Christian leaders, Christian pastors, houses of worship, universities are going to have to really start thinking twice about where we bank, because maybe we won't see physical persecution coming in this country, but we're beginning to see signs of financial persecution just right off the horizon.
Well, and the reality, this disrupts your life. I mean, we do not have our ministry bank accounts at Chase, but I have my personal accounts at Chase, and they will be getting an email from me as soon as we get off this saying I will be moving my personal banking and everything I have with you based on how this gets turned around. But the reality is it disrupts your life. All your credit card processing, right, that you're getting online is flowing into that bank account, and what happens there. I mean, there's just so many, when you have a large organization, so many things, your payroll deductions, I mean, everything gets disrupted, right? So I want people to understand, again, I want to read the meaning and value of religious freedom from the National Committee of Religious Freedom stands with the American founders in defending religious freedom, equality for all Americans and all their religious communities. But Justin,
that's kind of as American as apple pie, right?
I mean, it's just it's crazy, and you and I both know you've traveled abroad. You worked for CBN News. You're ordained minister as well. Have been in Christian ministry for years. The reality of Christian persecution around the world is insane. I mean, no one, in the last 200 years have we seen the kind of religious Christian persecution that we're seeing in so many parts of the world. But we have been apathetic in America, right? We should be remembering those that are in bonds around the world. But we are, we're in our little safe world. Well, guys, it's like not safe anymore.
No, I feel like we're frogs in the pot and the water's been turned up, and we're kind of comfortable and we don't realize that the water's getting hotter. And, when I look at what's happening, I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East and I see firsthand what our brothers and sisters there go through on a daily basis. And it's humbling to think, and praise God, we're not anywhere near what those brothers and sisters face on a daily basis. But make no mistake, where we lose ground on religious freedom here in the United States, we absolutely lose ground on religious freedom abroad and around the world, because those countries look to the United States to see, what do we really do? Do we really mean it when we say that we defend religious freedom, or are we hypocritical about it? And so that's why this is so important. And I think, we would welcome the opportunity. The ambassador still, as of today, has not heard back from Jamie Dimon on his letter that was sent privately 2 weeks before it was made public in the Washington Examiner. We're still waiting for an opportunity to connect with leadership at Chase to understand why were we canceled at 21 days, despite having a stated 60-day policy? Why is it that they're asking for information the IRS doesn't even ask us for? How is that even possible? That's, they're trying to fulfill requirements when we're not. Why weren't we given the chance to even present our information? We were just canceled and then not even given an opportunity. If it wasn't for persistence and calling repeatedly, we would never have known why. And hopefully we will. So we welcome the opportunity to sit down with Chase and certainly would welcome a chance for Chase to help correct the record and set things right. But we are, we exist to fight for religious freedom. So a lot of organizations we've found are afraid. They're afraid to go and talk about what's happened. They're afraid that they'll face retribution from their new banks because they don't want to be seen as, creating any problems. Well, somebody has to speak up. And maybe this is exactly what the NCRF has been called to do. And so we're taking that challenge on and standing up. And so if you or somebody has become the victim, or as we say, chased away by corporate banking, we want to hear your story. Visit our website at thencrf.org. Tell us your story and share with us. We are turning over these stories, by the way, to states' attorney generals for investigation. Because there's a number of stories that are coming in, which has shocked me reading through them. One ministry, very large ministry, had a banking relationship with a regional bank for 20 years. And then literally one day receives a letter, we're terminating your banking relationship effective immediately.
Wow.
No explanation. Millions of dollars in the bank, right? Over $1 million. I think it was close to $2 million in the bank. 20 years of business, nothing. Just goodbye, you're gone. You've got 72 hours to change your accounts over. So, this is the kind of thing that ministries are seeing and they're afraid to talk about, but we're not afraid, right? There's wisdom in truth. And we believe that, the Lord tells us to be light and salt.
Yes.
And speak truth with boldness. And so we want to speak truth in boldness, say what's happening, and we'd love to be able to shine some light in what appears to be some dark practices from the banking industry.
Well, and we've seen people in grassroots groups, conservative groups get canceled from Eventbrite in the middle of their events. I mean, we've seen a lot of crazy stuff with technology. And again, wherever you fall in the political spectrum, guys, it should concern all of us when a social media group cancels somebody or Eventbrite cancels somebody. I mean, we should all be up in arms. I was shocked at how many people did not respond to our IRS case, because this would have affected every church, every ministry in America if this has stood, right? And so that's one of the reasons, Justin, we built a 501, within a 501c3 church software system, a get out the vote system for the church that is not using liberal, nonpartisan groups that are liberal leaning to use them as our get out the vote effort. We built it within a church software that's secured by the church, that we cannot get canceled, so that we can remind people through 4 texts and 4 emails every election when to vote, how to vote, biblical values, and to do that without endorsing candidates or political parties. So as a C3, I can't endorse a C4, but I think you all should go check out the National Committee for Religious Freedom. Justin, thank you so much for your service to the Christian community and for this on this important topic. And please tell Ambassador Brownback that we're going to try to generate some more prayers and action for this. And everybody needs to write emails and letters to Chase Bank right now and just let them know that this won't stand. We will post after this. I will post in the caption of this video the Fox Business article where this generated, and you can see Ambassador Brownback's letter he wrote to the president of Chase Bank as well. Justin, thank you so much again for shining the light on this, and let's keep praying as believers. It's high time that we awake out of sleep.
Amen. Thank you, Bunny. And let me just say real quick how important it is that people pay attention, because I think elections are the most critically important multiple choice test that 55% of the general public never bother to study for. So I am so thankful for the work of Christians Engaged, what you guys are doing, how you're equipping the church. We have a civic responsibility, and what a privilege it is to be able to help shepherd, particularly as a pastor, right? To be able to help guide our congregations to being civically engaged and exercise their civic responsibility. And that's part of good stewardship, right? We're so blessed
Yes.
to live in this country. We're so fortunate to live in a land that we acknowledge the God-given rights and freedoms that we've been granted by the Almighty, but we have to defend those, and we have to make wise, intelligent choices and elect leaders who reflect the values and defend the Constitution, for goodness sakes, not try to think that it's a revisionist, piece of garbage that needs to be corrected. It's one of the greatest instruments of government on the face of the earth, and I totally believe it's something that God has inspired and helped give wisdom to our founding fathers to help craft. And religious freedom is absolutely at the core of what it means to be an American. And if we erode
Yes.
that, we erode our nation. And so thank you for what you're doing to equip the body of Christ to do the work of ministry, but also to do the work of fulfilling their civic responsibility. So thank you, Bunny, and so glad to be able to just connect and support Christians Engaged any way we can.
Well, thank you, Justin. We would be remiss to not mention our friends at First Liberty Institute that fight for our freedoms every day. And you and I both know the biggest religious liberty case in 20 years was won this year when Coach Kennedy earned us the right as a public employee to pray at a football game. And so this actually reverses the lemon test the Supreme Court and courts have held up for years that now really has opened the floodgates of religious liberty and freedom in this nation. So we are thankful for First Liberty and Kelly Shackelford and Alliance, Defending Freedom, and everybody that's fighting in this space for religious liberty and protections in the courts as well. So thank you, Justin.
Absolutely.
And we love you guys, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.